So we'll get going because it's 5 minutes past 7. So so I'm just going to open and close the meeting and make a few comments. And then I'll be handing it over to Lanny. So we'll just start off with karakia. So nā te rangi Māori, te ranga nā te ranga Māori, te hia Māori ora. And that means from peace comes harmony, from harmony comes peace. And I thought that was a very pertinent karakia to have at the opening of this session. I can't tell you how excited I am to get all our rural pharmacists together. As some of you know, I was CEO of the College of GPs, which also included the Division of Rural Hospital Medicine. So I got to know those people very, very well. I got to know ACRM in Australia. So I spent a lot of time with rural people, travelling around New Zealand, looking at rural facilities. So I've got, got a pretty good grasp of, Hello. So just
I think it's Sarah Preston. She just needs to mute herself.
Okay. Okay. So why are we all here tonight on the first week of daylight saving? We know from our workforce survey, from the emails that some of you were good enough to send in afterwards, and some conversations that I've had with individual pharmacists, and we've had around the executive committee table, that there are really huge issues for rural pharmacists: staff shortages, funding issues, rising operational costs, supply chain issues, etc. And also that working rural can be really isolating. It's kind of a double whammy, because you're working so hard just to keep the doors open that you become more isolated than your actual geography means that you are. So we really wanted to start this dialogue and to say that we know that there are issues. We're very conscious of that and really want to work with you. Lanny is a great advocate for rural around the National Executive. And so what we're going to do tonight is to have Graeme Smith, who I've had several discussions with. I know Graeme too from my previous life and his previous life as a leader of the Pharmaceutical Society. And it's really about, and I think that's the other thing that comes through when you think about rural, how much people love you, honestly, as the local pharmacist, and how much they need you. And it was really interesting. Michael and I had the privilege of going to Australia recently, and I sat in on the rural session. And it's the same over there. You know, you are the people that keep communities going. And the stories, even though the geography might be slightly different, the issues are exactly the same. So I'm going to hand over to Graeme, who I know has got some amazing stories to share. And perhaps you can just talk about, maybe we could recap about why you love rural pharmacy, if you can think of anything at the moment, and then the challenges you've faced, and about locums as well. So I'll hand over to Graeme.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Graeme Smith. I'm a past president. I own and run 2 pharmacies in Picton with my wife Isabel, who's also a pharmacist. One's located in the medical centre doing the bulk of the prescriptions in the town. The other's located in High Street, where we focus on services and retail down there. And to give you a bit of background, the permanent population of Picton and the Sounds is about 5,000 people. In the peak of summer, when the big cruise ships, and that can be somewhere between 15 and 20,000 people. We never intended to own 2 pharmacies in Picton, because this was supposed to be a wind down to retirement. But our GPs, just before we moved up here, they relocated into purpose-built premises, and they built a dispensary. And they said they want us to put one in there. And when we said, what if we don't? They said, we'll put it out to tender. And you all know what happens if you put a dispensary in a medical centre, it gets 70% of prescriptions. So we kind of had to do it. But you might ask, what attracted us back to Picton? When I say back, it's my old hometown. From the bright lights of Rangiora, a satellite suburb of Christchurch. The thing is, most of my practicing life has been spent in rural communities. Rangiora was rural when we moved there, 6,500 people servicing the North Canterbury farming community. By the time we left, as a satellite suburb of Christchurch, we missed the sense of community, and we missed the relationships with customers and the close relationships with prescribers. And like all of you, we know our customers really well. And we just love the little quirks of our marine setting. Who gets their medicines delivered on the unofficial mail run that New Zealand Post doesn't know about? Who uses beachcomber launches? Who uses Cougar Line? We look forward to seeing our migrating Summer Sounds residents who come in like the Godwits every year. We see a wide variety of international visitors in summer, and that makes life interesting and at times challenging. We use Google Translate quite a lot, but some of the challenges are things you might not think of. One of the most interesting ones, we were once asked by the PA of a passenger on a super yacht, could we please dispense the prescription anonymously because they wanted no record of this prescription being done. We have a close collegial relationship with the medical centre, and I think it's much easier working with pretty much with one medical centre than it is dealing with a whole lot of them, because over a period of time you build up such trust and respect that a lot of things that would take forever in a larger place just happen instantly. Like you just say, we need this script and this is why, and they do it, no questions. Fantastic. They're very supportive of us vaccinating. In fact, after the first 2 weeks of COVID vaccinations, they said, this is too hard for us, you do it. So we've done 12,000 COVID jabs in my wee pharmacy now. They were very supportive of us doing the emergency consult thing. We were a little, that I was talking about earlier for those who were online, we were a little bit nervous about starting online consultations, particularly for tourists in store, but the medical centre said, this is fantastic, because we waste a lot of receptionist time turning these people away because we don't have enough GPs to deal with them. So although it's fun and interesting, we have a lot of challenges. And the biggest one is lack of qualified pharmacists. 6 years ago when we came here, we actually had 8 pharmacists on the register in little old Picton. Now there are 4 of us working 3 full-time equivalents, and 3 of that 4 are aged over 65. Some of them dropped off the register because it was just too hard to stay on, too expensive, and the recertification requirements were seen by people getting towards the end of their career as a barrier. So that's something we maybe need to talk about later. But every pharmacy in Marlborough is short. 3 pharmacies in the last 12 months have cut their hours, and one's closed completely because they could not get a pharmacist. There are no locums in Marlborough, and that makes getting time off difficult. We had 2 big dramas in our lives last year. Isabel had a cardiac event, fortunately at work. And we were fortunate at that time that we had a pharmacist from overseas who had been practicing overseas for 3 months, was doing their return to work. So we got away with that. But when I fell off a ladder the day before the July school holidays and gashed my leg and was told by the orthopaedic surgeon in ED after he filled me with morphine and stitched me up that I needed to sit at home with my leg raised for 14 days, you can imagine how easy that was. I got 2 days. And as a consequence, that wound took 7 months to heal. I only got those 2 days, I might add, through the kindness of other pharmacists in Marlborough who pushed their own staff around to at least give me a couple of days to recover. We did at one stage entice a young pharmacist from Christchurch to Picton. She even bought a house. She was going to buy into the business, but unfortunately, personal issues, I think the boyfriend, pulled her back to Christchurch, and we've not been able to replace her. We've advertised everywhere, and I'm sure you've all had the experience of advertising on Seek and paying a lot of money and finding you're weeding out things like, even though you've asked for a pharmacist registered with the Pharmacy Council, I'm a checkout supervisor at Countdown and I really want to be a pharmacist. We've tried using a recruitment agency, that hasn't worked. We've tried just about everything we can think of. We've tried talking to the DHB about merging our 2 pharmacies together to make better use of the resources they've got. They wouldn't give us a moratorium. What we wanted to do was go into one premises located close to the medical centre but not in it. We didn't want the medical centre putting another pharmacy in there after we left. They wouldn't help us with that. We would actually quite like to retire if we could find a young pharmacist to come here. Whilst I love my job and my customers, 55 hours a week at age 68 tends to taint the love a wee bit. So we need, I think there's a lot of things, we need to find some solutions. I think we need a bit more flexibility in our workforce, maybe allowing our level 5 trained technicians to do some things they don't currently do. We probably need more flexibility in our ways of working. I'd love to see some bureaucracy cut out. My pet hate at the moment is methadone, where every day I'm recording methadone in 5 different places. And I think I'd love to see council be a bit more flexible in ways of keeping people on the register and providing different pathways for foreign registered pharmacists to come and register in. So that's about enough of a scene set for me. I think I should hand over to Lanny now.
I'd like to say something. I agree with everything you've just said, Graeme, and I feel your pain. I feel exactly the same things you've just said. So yeah, I'm very on board with the way you've said just now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can't agree more.
Thank you.
Thanks, Graeme. Yeah, it sounds like, we lived a similar life, but in different town, actually. So, yeah, kia ora. My name's Lanny Wong. I'm a pharmacist owner at Mangawhai Pharmacy. Yeah, so I service a similar sort of population as Picton by the sound of it. Like, it was almost like an identical place, but just different parts of Aotearoa. Yeah, so, as we all know, that's why we're still here. Rural pharmacy is great, that you really get to know your patient. You don't just know your patient, you actually know their dogs, their kids, their family, and their struggles as well. So you're part of the fabric of the community. And, I fully agree. We need to get together and, yeah, so this is really exciting. This is like the first time we've ever had a group of rural community pharmacists come together, because this has never happened before. We're often isolated and we're busy. So it's very exciting to see everyone on screen here. So as we all know, it's not all sunsets and community potluck in rural community. It's really hard. The hours are really long. And, often everything, workforce issue, supply issue, everything hits us a lot harder. Some of us are community pharmacy and the hospital pharmacists in your town. So you do everything. And it is stressful a lot of time, and there is no help, when we have any sort of weather event, we have power cuts, flooding, you're on your own. You have to, basically try and satellite your staff to try and get medicine delivered or get a pharmacist to your site. You have to find your way there, and it means, driving through flood water to get to where you want to go. And that's just, it's not easy, definitely not easy. And we all find creative way. I've invested a lot in the generator for my pharmacy, because power cut is definitely something that hit us really hard in Northland, especially where I am, because infrastructure is very poor. And you don't get any support for that. That's just, you've got to just make a profit and try and invest in all that sort of stuff, and you have to invest in robotics. So rural pharmacy are, we're all very innovative, except we don't really talk to each other, so we don't really gather these information about ourselves. So I think coming together will be the first step of like telling people who we are. And I think, we need to, I think the first step to any sort of change for ourselves is really us driving the change and coming together. And I say this because some of you may know us, like I was part of the Prescription Access Initiative group, and we advocated for free prescription for everyone in New Zealand. And that was something that came out of something similar, where a whole bunch of pharmacists came together. We all have this idea. We all wanted the same thing. We talk with each other, and then we list out what we think would be what we want to see. And we spoke about it, and we spoke about it quite loud. And, and I believe we can do this again as well. So I often look online for help. And one of the, some of you may already join this network, is the Rural Health Network, which supports the GP, the nurses, the physiotherapists, the midwife, and there is no pharmacist in there. I don't know how many, if they have any pharmacist member, but I did join, and I did have a chat to the chairman maybe a couple of years ago, and they are very interested to have more pharmacists on board. And I think all of us coming together, we could start something. It could be anything we want. We could have a locum network, and we could have just different ideas that can help each other. And and I think we just need to help the next generation sort of understand that you know, rural pharmacy is very meaningful, very dynamic, and yeah, it can be sexy again. And then I can see some faces here that are probably my age group. I don't like to think I'm that old, but I think we can attract some, you know, the next generation to come along and join us, and, you know, get more sort of meaningful experience in their pharmacy career. Yeah, so I'm lucky where I am. I'm only 1.5 hours out of Auckland, so I currently have recently attracted a pharmacist to drive all the way from central Auckland to Mangawhai every day to come and work for me, because she just had enough of working in Auckland, because it's just not fulfilling. She's doing some very intense work for very little reward. So I'm hoping she would stay for a very long time, and maybe one day she might change her mind to move somewhere rural. But at the moment, she's quite happy having that dual life where she works in a rural pharmacy and commute back to Auckland to see friends and things like that. Yeah, so I think, you know, some support will be quite good, I think, you know, to get the younger pharmacists to come along and give it a go. And I think, you know, it all starts here. So we all need to pull our brains together and, yeah, try and come up with something, and try and come up with some workable solution that we can present to whoever that wants to listen, really. I think that's all from me. I think I've ranted on a bit.
No, that's fine, Lanny. And in fact, just a couple of things to know, and I'm actually going to put Barack on the spot, but I know he won't mind. We have, as you know, a record number of interns on the program this year. I think we're around 242, bar one or two sort of in and out at the moment. And the record number of internationals, and it looks like we'll have an even bigger group of internationals next year. And through the research we've done of our technicians, we did a survey, we think there could be up to 90 of those technicians who are internationally registered pharmacists. And just to use a horrible acronym, they are from non-REQR countries, which means that they're not from the big countries that, you know, you recognise qualifications. So they're coming from places like the Philippines and India and things where they have to go through several more steps. So they are sitting out there, and Health New Zealand, who we have an excellent relationship with their workforce team, they are keen as mustard to find out more about these people and how we could convert them. The other two things that are happening that link up to that is that, as you may or may not have seen, a couple of Fridays ago, the Minister of Health quietly put out a pretty dramatic discussion paper about the regulation of health professions, which has the potential to have once in a generation change to how you are all regulated. And that could go from everything up in the air, Australian model, to nothing, but I think there will be change, and they're all about enabling. And it's about making things easier for internationals to come into New Zealand. And we were talking about it this morning, and, you know, do we split the complaints side, the patient safety side, away from the profession side? These are really big issues, and they are really pertinent to rural, because some of the reason we don't get people is, particularly our internationals, it's really hard. So I just wanted to ask Barack very quickly on that line. You have one of the few international interns who's gone rural this year. So how are they getting along? Unmute, Barack.
Right.
There we go.
Sorry, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, he's going really, really good. I got lucky, and I've got someone who's good. I think it all depends on the person that you get as well. It's going so well that his brother is also a pharmacist, and he's just done all exams. So we're going to bring in his brother next year as well. So that's good. But I think there's been a lot of hoops for him to jump to get to this point. I mean, he's a 27-year-old pharmacist, was practicing in a hospital in India and community, and was teaching. So he was like, look, he's a really good catch. I don't think, you know, all of them are like that, but definitely think I agree with Graeme. There needs to be a faster track to register some of these people. So I think it requires legislation change potentially, but, you know, having to do the now it's opera exam, which cost them a lot of money. And he's from India, or if someone else from the Philippines, when they, it's very expensive for them because they're using their currency that's a lot weaker. So the barrier is cost, then the English exam, then the law and ethics exam. So that's 3 hoops that he has to pass, and then he has to get the council to okay his degree, I think, from memory. And then on top of that, after that, he has to do an internship, which, as you guys know, costs $12,000, and we did get some assistance. I mean, I'm paying all those fees on his behalf, and I'm using it as a bonding mechanism, and I suggest you guys all do that. But I really feel strongly that that needs to be cut shorter, maybe a 6-month internship, maybe a New Zealand-based exam as well, because once they do the opera exam, they can actually go to Australia as well. So, I think we need a New Zealand-based exam, and I know the law and ethics exam is now maybe 3 times a year, I believe. Is that right? Which is good. But, we need a proper program as well for these overseas pharmacists. And I know Australia have been proactive beforehand. I think during the lockdown, they went all out on overseas pharmacists. And like, I've got another Filipino pharmacist as well, who's going to be our intern next year. So I'm hoping I've got 2 interns next year. And she's doing a course at the moment to help her with her OPRA exam. Now that's based in Australia. So obviously there's been a system built in Australia around overseas pharmacists. And so I feel like we need to have our own system here, so we're not piggybacking off Australia. And that means as well, we're not losing them to Australia, because some might go. I've got some other ideas as well. My biggest for rural pharmacy, especially when we're talking about rural, I believe there's levels of how rural you are. So I believe I don't know where everyone is, but I feel I'm probably the most rural bar West Coast South Island. I'm 2 hours away, 3 hours away from a main center. If you're an hour away from main center like Lanny, it's a little bit different. It's challenging as well, but it's a little bit better. In saying that, we have a shortage even in the cities now. So, but going back to the level, so when you're my level, it's really, really, really hard to recruit. What Graeme was talking about, I've done that as well. I mean, I've even made videos. Chloe has made some videos as well. I've had to do all sorts of stuff, and I still can't recruit. I wouldn't even get a single applicant, or I actually got more applicants from Australia than here. And it wasn't really applicants, they were inquiring, and you have to sell them the job, and then they still don't want to come. So I think the balance is really skewed the other way at the moment for us owners trying to recruit. And it's not right, because you really are held, you can't really improve your business or the services you provide, because you're always worried about rubbing any of your pharmacists the wrong way because they might leave. So it's actually not very good, in terms of quality. But the biggest thing I think that would make a difference to rural areas that are like me, that are 3 hours, 2 hours away from a main center, is our technicians, we train them locally, and their families are from those little towns like Taumaranui. And I've got techs that have been there for 10 years or 12 years. And those people, because they got family ties, they're not going to leave places like Taumaranui, unlikely anyway. So they are the ones that need to become pharmacists. So I see the biggest solution to pharmacists, shortage in rural towns, is techs having a pathway to registering as a pharmacist, or and maybe start with pack technicians. I know that's a big ask, and I know legislation wise, it's probably, I don't know, you guys, it's quite impossible, I would suspect. But I feel like if there's a pathway for pack technicians to register, then really for me, I feel like that I would solve that problem, because we just recruit locally technicians, and but at the moment, yeah, I don't know. Can anyone add? Is there something that could be done about that?
You've also
Yeah,
got
I
a
hear you, Barack. I think
Yeah.
if it's not technician, perhaps there's some sort of exemption in our license, perhaps, where we have 1 day a week where it's okay if the pharmacists work online, because everything is, we deal with e-prescription now. Like, doctors can do prescriptions at home, they can review blood tests at home, they can review everything at home, and pharmacists cannot do anything like that. We still have to go into the pharmacy, pick up every single little pill and check everything through. And I don't think that is right. I think, with our system modernizing to electronically, our work should change with it. Like, we've innovated in a lot of ways. We've got robotics in pharmacy. A lot of us have invested in the checking robots and things like that. But again, we can't leave the site. We have to physically be there to do everything. And I think, in extreme circumstances in places like Tamanui, Picton, in the Marlborough region, I know where Chloe is, it's quite isolated as well. In places like that, there should be exemption for different type of work, and it needs to start somewhere. And I think, this is good. This is good. We're generating some ideas. Let's put it to paper, and hopefully we can suggest it to the right people.
So I spoke to Tonic about this, because what I wanted Tonic to do was, because I have 2 PAC technicians, and what I wanted Tonic to do is to modify the software, so a pharmacist in Hamilton or in Auckland can do the clinical check, and then later on the PAC can do the final accuracy check. As soon as we started talking about this, the first roadblock that we got to was legislative. So till now, a prescription has to be signed by ink for it to be legal. So a pharmacist has to be physically signing a script by ink, otherwise the clinical check is not legal. I mean, in today's day and age, that's crazy, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, we've got electronic control drug book now, so that's a game changer. So there must be some leeway there. If we can have electronic control drug book, why do we still have to ink sign the prescription, I guess? Yeah.
Follow up on that, actually, Lanny and Barack, because during COVID, when I was at the Law Society, we did develop a workaround for that, because contracts had to be signed. So there was a change to the rule so that contracts could be signed electronically, which had never happened before. So if that would happen to the lawyers. And I've also just put in earlier up in the chat a link to the consultation doc, because that goes to the heart of what you were talking about, Barack, enabling people to come into New Zealand more easily. And you've got an unusual champion in John Snook, who's the head of health workforce at the moment. I think he came in, and one of the first things he said is, why can't technicians become pharmacists? And he's talked to the educators, and they're saying no, it's too hard, and they got very excited, as I said before, about all these international pharmacists who are working as technicians. How can we convert them? What would be a pathway to do that? So we actually do have, in the last 18 months, we've taken our funder on a journey as well, from knowing nothing about what we did to being really supportive and wanting to support us to do change. And we actually had about 2 weeks ago, our first ever roundtable with the council, i.e. the regulator, the funder and ourselves, and that had never happened. So again, we're doing a lot of foundation work that will pay off over time, and all of that will help rural. But what we're interested in tonight too is the Rural Health Network. Lanny talked about it. She's joined. Yay, Lanny, the first person. I have been to several of their conferences, which are brilliant. Really amazing chance to network and to hear from others. And we have put some budget aside, so there are 25 slots for people to join. And you just have to either put something in the chat or email advocacy@psnz.org.nz if you're interested. I can highly recommend it. And they also do a orientation. They get funded by the government to do an orientation for doctors coming to New Zealand. And I think the first day of the orientation will be ideal for our international pharmacists. So again, we're thinking about how could we potentially make that happen. But we're really keen for people to join that Rural Health Network. So if you'd like to, either put your name in the chat or send that email to the advocacy inbox. And I guess it's about thinking about next steps. So we've got everyone together. Maybe some just general thoughts, comments, ideas from the floor. Anyone got some good?
Just while we're talking about techs, we had a meeting in Blenheim last year after the survey came out, and we were looking at things we can do to relieve pressure. There was pretty much unanimous agreement that night that our level 5 techs are capable of selling almost all pharmacist-only medicines. And that would free up a bit more pharmacist time.
Like make a submission, or even if you don't want to have time to make a submission, I quite understand if you don't. Put your ideas to that same advocacy at psnz.org New Zealand, because of course we are doing a submission. I talked through it with Chris J this morning, and so that's going to be one of the most important submissions that we will do for some time. So really good to get either your thoughts about that, or you can put in something yourself. It is once in a generation opportunity. This has been talked about for decades. Graeme will remember, they've on and off, and this is the chance to actually have some quite big change. Because the other thing is, and again in rural you really know this, like if you can actually see complaint under the current system, that could be 4 or 5 years. You've got that hanging over your head, and that could change as well. So anyway, going back to general comments, questions.
I'm actually interested to hear from any sort of hospital pharmacists that are on this call as well. I think, I understand the rural community pharmacies challenges, but yeah, really interested to hear, is there any GP pharmacists here or hospital pharmacists here, and what are your challenges, and what do you think are some solutions to the challenges that you're facing? You can put it in the chat if I'm.
I can possibly talk a little bit to that. So hi, my name's Jane. I work at Whangarei Hospital, and just from a hospital perspective, we've had a huge problem with recruitment in the last probably, oh gosh, it's like 4 years or so. We're gradually getting a little bit better now, but it's had a huge impact on our community with regard to discharge summaries and transfer of information on transfer of care. So I also work in GP practice, so I see the other end of that, dealing with a lot of stuff that comes out of hospital that's wrong and causing a lot of problems. So last year, I think it was, or it might have even been the year before, I can't remember, I was involved with the sort of union negotiations down in Wellington, and I don't know, like it was pretty disheartening from like there didn't seem to be any solutions from central government to rectify our situation on a rural basis. So yeah, that can't really offer you anything there apart from disheartening conversations. Yeah, I mean, I love some of the solutions that you guys have come up with tonight, like the ink signing thing, like that's just ridiculous. I think, Michael, you've just put in the comments that you guys do, clinical checking. I think that would solve a lot of problems. I know Gisborne Hospital, we're having pharmacists week on, week off, and the remote pharmacist would be doing the clinical checks and sending the information over to them remotely. So that's certainly something to be looked into for the workforce, I would imagine, like people living in cities being able to do clinical checking for rural pharmacists, I think would help a lot. Yeah, anyone else?
I think overall, all roads lead to the funding, to be honest. So at the end of the day, if you look at pharmacists' wages and what they are now and what they were, I don't know, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, they haven't kept up with inflation. So you've got, it's what Lanny said, we've got to make ownership and being a pharmacist sexy again. So, and to be honest, nothing against hospital, but it's got to be community pharmacy as well, because a lot of pharmacists want to do community nowadays, hospital, but community there's such a large need as well. So I think making ownership, so restricting the licenses to actual need rather than, because the big box retailers are opening up everywhere, and young people are not, they're not looking to buy a pharmacy. Like when I first graduated in 2008, it was an ambition for me to own my own pharmacy one day. You talk to young people nowadays, and that's not what they want to do. And and I'm not saying every single one of them has to be, has to want to do that, but there needs to be a good portion, healthy portion, to be able to take over, retiring owners. And so the reason for that is they're scared of the discounters, and they're scared of ownership. And so I think and then the funding, it's a problem. We're doing more work for about the same amount of money. So I don't know how you can solve that with the current government and or future governments for that matter. But the funding needs to improve so pharmacists' wages can improve, and we are highly skilled professionals, but we're not being remunerated in that way. I mean, engineers and everyone else, when I first started being a pharmacist, my pay was pretty good compared to my friends. If I stayed as a pharmacist, my friends who started out as engineers would have now outgrown my salary. They all are earning higher salaries. So it's really not fair for young pharmacists. So, I don't know how do you guys have any solutions, Michael and Helen, regarding that? And I mean, you can only advocate, but I don't know, what's the government saying? So, yeah.
I think, Michael, well, we don't advocate on the funding side of things. In fact, we're not even around the NAR table this year as an observer, but that's another story. But I do think there is hope in terms of both the regulation around the this consultation doc on how health workforces are regulated, and there is a real willingness. I think I call it the lost decade. I think pharmacy lost a decade in terms of, I was saying that today to my team actually, 12 years ago, the GPs moved from their tax-free bursary to being employed, and they have gone from strength to strength, and they now get as trainees, more than $100,000 a year as trainees. And that shift never even started with pharmacists. And that then travels right through career pathways. But we do have a health workforce team that's really keen to work with us. The big problem we have, Barack, is that's come at the worst possible time. If it had happened a decade ago when there was some money floating around, we'd be making really good progress. But in fact, as we all know, and as each day goes by, even more uncertainty about money. But there is absolutely a willingness, and also on the medicine side, to open up medicines and make medicines more available. And we've done a lot of work with Todd Stevenson, who is David Seymour's person on Pharmac. So Chris J behind the scenes has been doing some awesome work on all of yours behalf in terms of what will be available. So I think we are using the levers that we have. And I think the other thing is, and I will pass over to Michael in a second, but it's using the stories, like the stories that you've told about your experiences here, and some of which we've shared, getting through. We've got a meeting with the minister next month, and we're getting a whole 20 minutes. So we intend to make most of every second of that. But I'll pass over to Michael to say whether he's got a few comments in terms of the things we're trying to do.
So I think, the stories that you guys give us help us so much to make sure that what we are saying is reflecting what you are facing on the front line, because it's no good me saying what I think you're experiencing. I need the real facts, the real hardships that you're experiencing, so we can make sure that those decision makers really understand how bad it is out there, and how we need some urgent action to generate some positive change, particularly in rural pharmacy. And I think one of the key focuses of when we had our 20 minutes with Minister Brown, and making the most of that 20 minutes, is if we're gonna, as much as everything comes back to funding, unfortunately, and we'll always be saying, we never stop saying that pharmacy needs to be better funded, needs more sustainable funding, but the focus will be on, if you remove XYZ barriers, you will get this. and leaving the money out of that conversation, but and just focusing on this is the barrier. If you take those barriers away, you're going to get so much more. You will achieve your because you got to market it for their win effectively. You will achieve your health targets if we remove these barriers, because you'll get an even more high performing workforce. You'll maximize technicians, you'll maximize pharmacists, and how we operate to deliver the best care possible to New Zealanders. And then we can worry about the money bit afterwards, because we all know there is no money in the system, so we have to get that buy-in first on that need and how it's going to deliver what New Zealanders need for their best health. And so it's a very crucial 20 minutes that we'll have, that we're going to be.
The other thing I would say,
sorry,
the other thing I'd encourage everyone here. I've been talking to our local MP, and she actually she sent my letter to Minister Simeon Brown. So I think we should all be talking to our local MPs as well and making noise in that channel as well.
Absolutely.
I think everyone, and that helped with the,
There's huge benefits to gain from leveraging your, what you guys can do out in your areas is to leverage or start forming relationships with your local MPs so that they come and they see it. Obviously, I know it's not rural, but I'm very keen to get Minister Brown into Vicky Chan's pharmacy, which is in his electorate, acknowledging it's very far from rural, but just to get him in a pharmacy and start seeing, but invite your local MPs along to see firsthand what you're experiencing. Some of them probably are your customers potentially, but they just and you can use it to leverage the conversation.
She coordinate and share some of that.
Can I just say something to address the question that Sandy posted about stress in the workplace? And I see Viv's posted something about HDC. Look, some of the things that are being reported in pharmacy today that have got to HDC, I wonder what the hell they're doing. I see errors that could be made by any of us, and I live in absolute fear of making one of those errors myself, because there's just so many distractions going on. I mean, Thursday, with one level 5 technician working 6 hours in a day, we did 212 scripts and I did 55 vaccinations. I was there till about 7 o'clock checking the packs and then, because I couldn't check them while everything else was going on. But one of the things that annoys me about the HDC is it felt like all the blame was put on the pharmacists. But when you look at the system pressures that contributed to those errors, isn't it the job of the HDC to point out those system errors? That's what a coroner would do. Why is the HDC not doing it? And is anybody doing anything about it?
That's what the consultation is about. I almost called you Isabel. So that paper, if you have a look, that is about the whole system. So how patient safety, which is the HDC side, and workforce regulation. So now is the time. We need to have better triaging. We need to have early resolution services. We need to have different types of resolution. The current system, I've just seen too many doctors and now pharmacists have the huge amount of emotional and mental toll a complaint can make on everyday practice and then on your career. Is just not acceptable.
I was just going to support you, Helen. That's the place to raise these concerns, and we can certainly do it with our advocacy work. That's Graeme, just going back to your point, it's the same for the GPs. They are actually, the HDC is behaving almost outside its mandate. It's becoming not focusing on the systems, but actually on the individuals, which it should have never done that. So that noise is coming from all sorts of places. I think Ben Gray seems to be quite an advocate in that space and a noisy person for the right reasons. So we certainly will be, informing our, submission through that too.
So has something changed in the HDC? Because I've only been in pharmacy, actually I've been for a long time, but I don't remember it being such a problem nowadays. Nowadays, everyone's just so scared because it's just like what Graeme said, and then they refer it to the council, and then you're in trouble with the council, and you have to. So what is that? It never used to be like that. So what has something changed?
I think the perception and the reality is there's what's called scope creep, Barack. In the event that it's taken on roles which it was not set up to do, which really has been the bane of, I think that's been documented really clearly, and HDC is being called to really get back into its lane, which is around systems as well,
Right.
rather than hanging up individuals. There is a place for that, but it does seem to be more of their focus. So I don't know what has changed. I think it has had, yeah, there's probably plenty of things it's doing, like including, I think it has its own complaints portal. So
Right.
it doesn't encourage the complaints to go and just have a chat with the person that you want to kind of talk to resolve it at that normal person-to-person level. And so people are quite happy to go on that and start to complain. So, yeah.
Possibly not realizing, Sandy, just what that's going to trigger. Again, we were talking about that today. Someone might think, oh, exactly, having a chat with your pharmacist. One of our staff talked about that, how much more successful that can be. Even if it's a bit painful at the time, if that can resolve things, it's such a better outcome. But going back to, in terms of next steps, would people like to, talked about lobbying MP and local media, would it be helpful to have a call like this more often, a couple of times a year, just to touch base with people and see how things are going? I see a few nods. It's really one of the few good things to come out of COVID. Well, two good things: vaccination, pharmacists becoming vaccinators, but also, being able to talk to people virtually. I can't think of many other benefits. So, we do have this ability now to get online and have a chat at night, not have to get into cars in the middle of winter. So we'd be really keen to, see whether you were interested in doing this, every so often.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, well, that sounds like we've got some support there, and I feel like we are in the second year of a 3-year term, and I think we are definitely in a year of action by the government, and Simeon Brown has definitely become the action man of the coalition in terms of health. So that creates opportunities for us. And we're probably more well positioned than you realise because of all the hard work we've done behind the scenes to build relationships with people. So again, never underestimate, as Michael touched on, our ability to say, you know what, the other night we met with a group of 50 rural pharmacists and they said the system's broken and whatever, and, give some example. That is very powerful advocacy for us. So it's a real investment of your time, but it really does help us in our work as well. Are there any final, so we've got people, so just to recap in terms of what we need from people, I've reposted the link to the consultation doc. Either send, you can throw in something yourself, or you can email your thoughts to advocacy inbox, and Chris J and his team will look at those when they're doing the submission. And then if you're interested in joining the rural network, which I can highly recommend, and Lanny has also recommended, you can either put us something in the chat or again email, and we really, I would really encourage you to do that. It's great to be able to go and talk to other people in the sector. And any other thoughts? So we've got Bronwyn's been busily sending some very good chats. Is there anything you'd like to say, Bronwyn? Where's she gone? There she is.
I'm not sure if my thing will work. I'm actually in rural New Zealand at the moment. Are you?
There was
Can
a
you
light
hear
in
me?
the darkness. I'm not sure what you were doing, Bronwyn. I thought maybe you had your headlamp on.
It's a bit like that. I'm actually outside a car in Amberley.
She did.
But if you can hear me okay, yeah. I mean, I always have a look sound rural. I look after about 6 very rural pharmacies, from Blenheim, Central Otago, West Coast even. So yeah, I have so much to say on this topic, but a big one for me is just going back to the workforce is getting that contracting right, so that we're not having pharmacies where we don't need them, and we have pharmacists available where we do need them. And that has a huge impact on hospitals as well. And I've been singing that tune for a long time, and there is contract policy in some areas that's working really well. So that would be my number one. And then secondary to that, going to the HDC stuff, there are patterns evolving where HDC are looking at systems, but they don't seem to understand the concept of what the system is. And rather than looking at, out of stocks contributing to an error because of the confusion, they might then just, when they look at a system issue, they look at the pharmacy's SOPs, and they just looking at pharmacy as a system rather than the actual pharmacy system, if that makes sense. So it's just working further against us, unfortunately.
I just want to touch on that. I just want to touch on that a bit.
It's good for your health.
Oh, is that Bright talking? Oh,
no. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to touch on the whole. So I think everything's sort of tying together. Like the other thing, like I know getting PACs to register, getting a faster pathway for overseas funds is one of the solutions. The other thing is probably to try and, it's important to attract the next generation. Like I was just reading what you type up there, is that what we do is quite intense. Like not any locum pharmacist can step into our shoes and do what we do, because we tend to just do a lot more than what a normal pharmacy would do. We don't just count and pour, pretty much. That you tend, I don't know how to explain it. Like some of you might have a better vocabulary to describe this, but we go above and beyond for our patient, and that not every locum pharmacist can come in and just step into our shoe and do the job. So it's really important to try and, attract people to come along and actually replace us, like be the replacement, or actually commit to our community as well. So I would really like to see that. I don't know how to do that, but I think forming a group and making people know who we are is probably a step. It's a good start, and I think that's really important. Like, I think we had that funding for a little while as well, but that didn't work for me, that funding. I don't know how successful it is for everybody else, but I think that needed to be expanded to anyone that want to come and work rural, because often when they first graduate, they might not think they want to go practice in rural places, but maybe 5-10 years into their career, they might think, hey, going rural could be a good idea. A $12,000 funding could be the game changer for them, to come and give rural pharmacy a go, hospital or community or GP practices. I think we need. First step is just to come together and throw some ideas around.
Hi, Lanny. It's good points. It's Marie Robertson. I've got a couple of pharmacies in South Taranaki. I think biggest point is we've got some really good long-term things being talked about, but we're going to need some short-term stuff. Like has been pointed out, we're talking about issues that are happening like next month, next year, like changing legislation and all those sorts of things. Is a long time. For anyone that's still been in pharmacy for a while, the number of times we've heard pharmacies at a crossroads is just insane. So those are long-term things, but we really need to get some strategies going on fixing some short-term stuff. Like there's some really awful stories coming out about like people not being able to get time off for family stuff, and that's all why we're there. We're all part of a community. So is there anybody in the group that is probably a bit more younger and enthusiastic than me that would be prepared to present to the students? Do we need to be getting into the ears of the pharmacy students rather than letting the discounters do that, and promoting ownership? I went to some of our pharmacists and asked if they wanted to buy into the company, and now they looked at the ceiling and they looked at the floor, and obviously I don't do a great job of promoting ownership as being a fun way to go. So I think we need to be in the short term really upselling the awesomeness of rural pharmacy to our students. They're there. We just need to be as vocal and as loud.
That's a really good point that you make, Mary, and I think we could utilize the branches that are located where the schools are to help facilitate this. I know that, speaking for Auckland, obviously not a rural area, but every year they hold the pharmacy careers evening, and we can through the local branch stating that in the lineup, you've really got to make sure you've got some rural pharmacists speaking, not just and I say this as a speaker who does it every year, not the same generic speakers that come every year, but showcase rural in that space. And as well, we do need to figure out a way to get in front of them earlier as well, because that evening isn't until their 4th year. So we need to really be starting pushing it from the very first year in pharmacy.
Got the first intake from Waikato will come out. They're into their first year, so they'll have 1 more year, and they'll be out in 27. So that's a possibility, Marie. We've also got, if things pan out next year, we could have up to 1/3 of our interns are internationals. And again, I think they are, you heard what Barack said, he's captured one and almost reeling in another one. And I think that they are also a group that we could target to encourage them to, actually we're just talking today about how can we get ahead of the game a bit and get some pre-indication of enrolment from them, and then start to try and be a bit more active in promoting placements, say in rural, for example, Marie. So we're actually actively thinking about that, and that would be a really good short-term solution. I talked to a lovely young woman from Zimbabwe who had come to New Zealand on something like the 24th of January and has started in a practice in New Plymouth on the 28th of Jan. That's a pretty radical step to come from Harare to New Plymouth in one go and start your internship. But we've got brave young pharmacists here like her who are prepared to do that. And they're the very kind of people that we need in rural. That's a courageous step. A young woman who's done that. So I do see some real opportunities, and we're just trying to get our head around about how we can identify those people and how we can start talking to them earlier on about potential placements. We may come out to you as rural pharmacists and say, would you be interested in taking an international? Because if we could do a bit of matching and use some examples like Barack, we may well get, and then we've got all these technicians who are actually registered pharmacists in other countries. So I do see those, Marie, as some of our really, kind of hot leads, if you like, if we were salespeople, people who we could convert to rural. So I think, that's the kind of thinking we've been having.
Hi, it's Jane Abel here. I work for Midland Community Pharmacy Group. Used to be Waikato Community Pharmacy Group many years ago. Some of you might have remembered us. We come down and we went to Otago, and you were probably a student then, and to Auckland, selling rural pharmacy to the students at the pharmacy schools. And it worked well, and I think we were selling it from the fact that coming to Waikato, we had all these extra clinical services, added value services, and we were selling that, great working in rural communities. It seemed to work well. We had a lot of people, a lot of interest, and it did feel like some of our rural, but probably not Barack. I don't think we managed to get anyone down to Tomanui back in the day, but places like Te Wiri and a few of the further afield South Waikato. And so I think that really does have an impact if you can get in and have rural pharmacists speaking to students. But as you said, I think, Michael, it's good to get in there a bit earlier, rather than in there last year when we tried to look at getting interns. But it's a really good option if you can find someone to go and sell rural pharmacy. It's a success, but that was a long time ago. It would have been, probably 15 years ago now.
I agree. I think those are good ideas. So any other final comments? I'm conscious that we've kept people for within an hour.
Just a quick question, Helen. How many interns do we have? Do you think there'll be next year? And how many do you think New Zealand needs to sort of have good supply of pharmacists?
I'll answer the last question first. I don't think anyone knows. We were looking at the data that Health New Zealand has, but that's mainly hospital pharmacy vacancies, actually. It's not a true picture of the need. So we do need to, what we do know, it's a lot more. And then next year, so this year we've got a record number. Next year it could be up to 260, with depending on the number of internationals that come through. So, and again, I just emphasising that, historically pharmacy in New Zealand hasn't had a lot of internationals. It really surprised me coming from GP land how few there were. And so our workforce is rapidly changing, and talking to people like we've had people who are recruiting internationals, like Amelia Gardner. She doesn't see that changing anytime soon, and that's what the Australians told Michael and I when we were there recently, didn't they, Michael? They've seen the same influx, and it hasn't stopped, and it is about what you pointed out, Barack. These people, we think of New Zealand being under pressure financially, but these people are coming from countries where the GDP is much lower, and they were coming here for a future. So I don't think that's going to change. What we have to do is change to adapt to that in every aspect of what we're doing, and it is an opportunity for rural. I really do think it is. If we could get them, and I think the key is the intern year. If you can get someone in the intern year, you can get them, get some links with the community, and, that can really make a difference. So that's one of the things that we can do in the short term, Marie, in terms of next year, and if there are a large number of internationals, and if we can help free up the pathway to New Zealand, there's more of them, and get some of those techs and convert them, that's a ready pool of people that we can really encourage. Because at the moment, most of the internationals are working for the big employers. And that's understandable. That's, it's easier. It's just been an easier pathway for them. So we need to be able to promote rural to them. And Barack's going to help us do that.
Okay.
He's promised me. So any final thoughts? We've got some great, we'll be taking notes from this, and we'll get it back to you.
I just have one more thing to say, Helen. Just sorry to interrupt, but adding on to what Jane said, I don't really know how to explain it, but with our interns that we currently have, just working quite hard amongst all the modalities of pharmacy to give them a really broad range of experience. So say if you're a community and you've got a community intern, talk to the hospital or your GP practice pharmacists, or if we can get in front of the students at pharmacy school, just giving them the range of careers that are out there. So attracting people to stay in the profession and giving them more information of the diversity of what they can do with their career once they're in the profession, and doing that really early on in the piece, like when they're a student or in their intern year, I think is pretty helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things we started doing this year, so we've got a new education manager, Nick Kimber, and we've started getting more of the leadership team to go to training days, to sit down and talk to young interns and just talk to them about the very things that you're talking about, or kids during lunchtime, where really good conversations actually over a bite to eat, and what are their aspirations. And there were two young women, and also gives us optimism. There were two young women from Auckland, one who'd gone to Rotorua and one who'd gone home to Hawke's Bay, working in hospital, and really thoroughly enjoying it. And those are the types of people we need to get their stories out as well. That you haven't died socially if you go and live in Rotorua when you're 22 or whatever. So those are the types of things that we need to be able to tell people, and it's about the amount of resource we have as well. Kirsty, who's possibly on the call, who's helped organise this, is doing it. Those profiles that Kirsty does every week get really good uptake. People know that's part of it. Jane, the one that we had, the young one on the West Coast, got fantastic cut through with people, and she'd done all sorts of things. So we really are doing everything we can to try and get the stories out about what people can do and are doing, but it has to be a constant stream.
You guys might have to get a TikTok page and put those stories out there.
Yeah, that's the next step.
To get to the young people, because I think they're all on TikTok. Well, I know you're on Instagram as well. Yeah.
Are you offering to be our poster boy for TikTok, Barack?
No, I don't have TikTok. I don't use TikTok, but I know.
Well, our social media, we've just had someone helping us with social media. He's just about to finish his contract. And interesting fun fact, actually, our young pharmacists are using Facebook. We don't know why. We're very surprised, but they are. So that's what our stats are showing us. Maybe it's because we don't have a TikTok account. Like, oh, go back to Facebook. I'll message mum and then have a look at Facebook or something. I don't know. Something's going on. But yeah, so we definitely are trying to go to where they go to, but they are using channels we wouldn't think they would be. So are there any other final comments from you, Lanny or Graeme?
Well, I was just going to be slightly facetious and say that the way Trump's going, we'll have an influx of Americans, certainly will stuff their economy that much they'll want to leave, and our wages will look attractive.
Oh, I like Jane's idea. Yes, absolutely. Matched and dispatched into rural. That's the answer.
I must be one of those young pharmacists that are using Facebook. Yeah, I really like what you said, Jane, giving the intern different experience. Like I can see in the chat, a few people are saying there's not enough time. They're so busy, they can't train interns. You know, perhaps it could be a mixed intern. Because I remember when I went through internship, there were people on dual internships that they did in hospital and community, or compounding places and community. So I don't know when that stopped, or is that still happening? That just reminded me about that. So I thought that will be a good thing. Because often, you know, in some rural places, I know Dargaville, you're the community pharmacist and the hospital pharmacist as well. So you have to do everything. So that's not a bad idea to be able to spread the load out to bring, you know, a young pharmacist to the region.
Yeah, I know we've gone well over time. In the UK, they are looking to shift their intern model, so they'd spend like 3 months community, 3 months hospital, and 3 months general practice to give that level of exposure, so people, the pharmacists coming through, know that there are options out there for them, and that drives that positivity and that desire to, you know, that the profession is really great, and rather than all your time in one place.
That's
a interesting
decade. Lanny, you know, we've lost a decade. You know, that's what GP trainees have been doing for the last, Jake Sandy's thing, they do 6 months either in rural and or high needs. So, and then 6 months in, you know, so vice versa. And in fact, I was really surprised coming into pharmacy that they do a whole year in one place. That is not a great start to a career in terms of getting that breadth of experience. I can see the advantages for the employer and, you know, whatever, but you know, in terms of opening people's eyes up early on to possibilities, not necessarily the best model. Anyway, we have gone way over time. Okay, we have like, oh, there we go. So I think we've got some great comments here. So we will definitely take these on board and write some notes up and circulate. And I think is that we have gone over time. So thank you, everybody. And I will I don't really want to say a few final words, Michael, since you're on the call.
I just want to thank everyone for
this week. It's his first anniversary of his first year as president. So
does it feel like longer? But no,
yeah.
I'll just say thank you everyone for making the time to be here. I do really appreciate. You know, you've all had long days at work, and you take another hour out of the evening, and then we've stolen a further 15 minutes from you, and we've all got very busy lives. And I do really hope that this Hui and future ones, they're not just, I don't want them to just be talk fests. We do want to create solutions, and we do want to deliver positive change for rural pharmacy. I acknowledge in the comment here, we absolutely do need some urgent changes, and a lot of the conversations tonight are long game things, but we have to play both sides at the same time, short game and long game, because otherwise we just continue that becoming further and further behind those 10 years that Helen described. So we're really keen to hear your ideas, so please send them through the advocacy inbox, or there's also, if you want to get in touch with me, there is the president's inbox as well. But yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Good night. We will get the notes around to people soon.